Welcome to episode 135 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. The Baltimore Ravens are in the playoffs for the third straight year, but still seeking that first postseason win since 2014, and that's the topic of the day. They took down the Cincinnati Bengals last week. They were awarded, whatever term you want to use, the ability to control their own destiny. They didn't flinch, turned around, and beat down the Bengals 38-3. It was a blowout in every sense of the word, from the score to the yardage disparity, the time of possession, any facet of that game you want to look at, the Ravens dominated. So that's obviously going to be topic of discussion today, but there's going to be quite a bit of looking forward at the postseason, the Ravens' next opponent, and sort of where this team is heading, this team's chances. It's going to be a long week, I'll tell you that. It's a good long week, though. It's a long week of anticipation, a long week of excitement, but I think I texted you this yesterday, Jake, after the Ravens won. The only thing we're going to hear this week is how Lamar Jackson hasn't won a playoff game, how this team, if they somehow, it's just everyone's going to start assuming the worst. Well, if they don't win on Sunday, does Harbaugh get fired? Are they going to move on from Lamar? Is he going to get paid? What do they do? Are you going to – it's all going to be doom and gloom hypotheticals. And don't get me wrong, they could very well lose this game. I'm not saying the Ravens guaranteed to win this game. It's a very even matchup. Tennessee awaits for the second straight year. This time Ravens go to Tennessee to play, but they spoiled the Ravens season last year. I've said enough here. Jake, what were your immediate reactions here on Sunday? Ravens took care of business, and then watching the 4 o'clock games to await and see who the Ravens were going to face in the first round.
I mean, for me, it just, brought up all sorts of emotions because, had we still been under normal circumstances and the world wasn't being ravaged by the coronavirus, there's a fairly good chance that I would still be living in Nashville right now. And, before everything started, I was working full time at the Country Music Hall of Fame as just at the retail shop. But I was making a good chunk of change and could have attended this game under normal circumstances, which would have been a lot of fun. But how can you not feel great? I mean, you just kind of look at Lamar Jackson's dominance against the Cincinnati Bengals here. I mean, we're looking at this according to, he's got all these insane stats, especially rushing against them, like 442 yards. And I think it's only in, 6 or 7 games he's played against them. He's looked good throwing the ball too, but it's just this running attack. We know the Bengals are nothing to write home about, and their run defense is terrible. We obviously saw what J.K. Dobbins can do, but to answer your question, going back into the playoffs, that is the big question. That's the storyline of the week, because as much as the Ravens have dominated over the last 2 seasons, ever since Lamar took over as starting quarterback, the one monkey on the back has been the playoffs, and in both showing so far. Lamar's first game, he did not look good. He did not play well. And then last year, kind of a combination of things. They fall behind early, and there's drops, and Derrick Henry runs all over the Ravens, and a very disappointing way to end a 14-2 campaign. I definitely think, especially, it's not just the Ravens fan in me saying this, but you look at how the Ravens have played the last 5 weeks. They've gone undefeated and won the games they've supposed to be winning. They've taken care of their business. They deserve to be in the playoffs. And by the same point, when all this is happening, teams like the Steelers, teams like the Titans, granted that they had that crazy win against the Texans last week. If the Texans were a little bit better, maybe that doesn't happen. Who knows? But some of these teams in the AFC, the Browns too, they did win yesterday. They beat the backup quarterback for the Steelers, Mason Rudolph. They've kind of struggled a little bit. So we're seeing some of these teams in the AFC not look as great. And I do think the Ravens have a good chance to go into Nashville and win at least one playoff game. Very exciting, and it certainly provides a great storyline, considering these teams just met, a year ago in the postseason.
Yeah, there's a whole huge dynamic, just 2 games between the Ravens and Titans in the last calendar year, but this feels like a rivalry just with everything that's happened in those 2 games. The fact that they came in, dethroned the Ravens in their 14-2 season. No one gave them a chance in that game. They won the game, and they won it very handedly. And then in the regular season, they come back to M&T Bank Stadium. No fans, not as ferocious of a crowd presence, but still, they come right back in. This is a perfect opportunity for the Ravens to right their wrongs from the postseason and maybe let out a little bit of anger, revenge, if you want to say that. Titans come in. You have the whole midfield logo fiasco. Mike Vrabel, Harbaugh get into it. Some of the Titans players get into it with Harbaugh. Yeah, it's going to be a really hyped up game. I think it's a really even matchup, obviously, 4 seed, 5 seed. And it'll just be interesting to see what happens. But, I mean, like I said earlier, it's going to be a really long week waiting for this game to actually kick off at 1 p.m. on Sunday, because it just all you're going to hear all week is concern and worry, and that's fine. But if your concern and worry leads to what are we going to do after we lose this game, talk about that when they get there. Enjoy this week. You're the type of people that spent the entire season saying, oh, it doesn't matter what they do now, it matters what they do in the postseason. Well, guess what? The playoffs are here, all right? And you're only guaranteed one playoff game. So try to enjoy it, please. You waited all year, bitched and moaned all year about how nothing mattered except the playoffs. Now the playoffs are here. Please just enjoy it. Don't spend your entire playoff week hypothetically thinking about what happens if the Ravens lose this game. I mean, that's such a miserable way to be a fan. But we'll cycle back to this game at the end, and we'll talk about the playoffs as a whole, maybe give some picks and a little Super Bowl prediction. But let's get into this game. We knew coming in that the run game was rolling, that was going to be their bread and butter and something that they were just going to have to ride as far as it'll take them. Lamar running this offense looked as good as ever, looked like the MVP again. They're just beating down opponents left and right, finding ways to win games. You look at the Cleveland game, a tough opponent, they find a way to win. Just a really good 5-game stretch. And when all is said and done here, after 16 games, the Ravens have achieved history again. Now, coming into the season, I remember having conversations about the 2019 Ravens and how much, how historic they were, especially from a run perspective. And while I think we all expected a better than an 11-5 record here in 2020, we were, saying before the season started, let's calm down. They're probably not going to repeat and make history again. And what they did from a numbers standpoint last year was very unique. It was very special. Let's acknowledge that. But let's not expect them to go out there and do that every year, because it's not reasonable to expect that. Well, at points along the way this season, they're suffering these losses. They look a little out of sync. They look out of sorts. The offense doesn't look great at times. You're thinking there's no way they're going to finish the season with anything close to historic. Well, guess what? Here we are. The regular season is over, and the Ravens made a bunch of history again, and I'm going to go through it here. 3,000 rushing yards as a team. That's the big one. They've done it now in back-to-back seasons, 2019 and 2020. They obviously had more last year than they finished with this year, but there have been just 4 different teams in NFL history to rush for over 3,000 yards in a season. The Ravens have 2 of those 4 teams. The other 2, I don't know if you wanted to make any guesses, Jake, but they were in the 70s. So I'll tell you that. These 2 other teams, you have to go all the way back to the 70s to find the 2 other teams that rushed for over 3,000 yards in a season.
Wasn't one of them the Steelers, or am I wrong?
No. I've got New England and I got Buffalo. And I believe, after talking to my dad, that Buffalo team, 73, was when they had O.J. Simpson. So he accounted for like 2,000 of those 3,000, I'm guessing. Just look at the era. Only 4 teams to do it is crazy. The Ravens to have 2 of them. To do it in back-to-back years is crazy. And then to do it in the modern pass-happy NFL, you go back and look at the 70s, it was very run-oriented or balanced at best. Nowadays, it's all about passing the ball. And the Ravens have done this back-to-back years in the passing era. I think that says something. Lamar made more history against the odds here, I'll say, because he needed like 95, 92 yards coming into this game to hit 1,000 on the year. I said on last week's episode he had an outside chance just because they're playing Cincinnati. Well, that ended up being very helpful because he has... Look, Cincinnati, like you said, Jake, earlier, they've had no answer for Lamar's running ability since he entered the league. His very first start in the NFL was against Cincinnati, carried the ball like 25 times, something crazy, ran wild. Ever since then, it's been nothing but great games against Cincinnati with his legs at least. Even his biggest, most highlight reel play, the spin move play, came against Cincinnati. So they have had no answer for him. He comes up in this game just shy of 100 yards in this game, reaches 1,000 on the season, first quarterback to have 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons. He's just getting started, folks. And again, despite missing a game due to COVID, he played 15 games last year, rested week 17. He plays 15 games this year, misses one with COVID, still hits 1,000 yards. Ravens rushed for over 400 yards on the day as a team. That's a franchise record, not surprising. I think they hit the franchise record around 350 and then pushed the bar even higher. That one's probably going to stand for a while. First team to rush for over 400 yards in a game in 20 years. How about that? Dobbins set the record for most touchdowns by a Ravens rookie. And I'm sure I'm missing some other accolades here along the way, but those were the big ones. The point I want to make, it all comes back to, we had some discussions before the season started and maybe even said it was foolish to expect, or it obviously is foolish to expect, history every single year. But after 2 straight years seeing this from Lamar and company, the record not as good as we probably wanted it this year, 11-5. You're still in the postseason, but you didn't win the division. A lot of history still made. I think it's safe to say at this point, with a Lamar-led offense and with him at the controls, this offense can go anywhere, in my opinion. They're capable of anything. I mean, the numbers that they have put up in the last 2 seasons are ridiculous. So your thoughts here on the historic rushing day, another historic rushing season, the future, Dobbins, Lamar, all these guys. What's on your mind?
It's funny because do I think that in today's NFL, it is a good thing to be able to, no matter what, have a downfield passing attack and be able to strike at any point with throwing the ball, and that being your go-to. Is it a good thing to have in most cases in the NFL? Yes, you're absolutely right. With how the game is, in the way the game is going, the passing game, it's more prevalent than the run game. So is it nice to have? Absolutely. But that's not to say that you can't win with the historic style of play, everything that you just mentioned there, that what the Ravens have done. And really the only loss this season, yes, did it suck to realize that the Ravens weren't as good as the Chiefs and the Steelers at the time or the Titans at the time? Absolutely. But the only game that I'm annoyed that they lost is the Patriots game. That's just simply because the Ravens hands down are a better team than the Patriots were this year. And if there wasn't, tsunami happening in the middle of the game, not to say the Ravens would have won that game because they were at a bad spot at that point and played like crap. But I do think they would have at least given themselves a shot had the tsunami not been happening. For all that said, for all the history that you just rattled off there, as far as the running game goes, people are still going to go, because of how today's NFL is. Oh, well, Lamar only attempted 18 passes yesterday. He only had 10 completions. Oh, he only had 113 passing yards. That's terrible. Still threw, he threw an interception, only had 6.3 yards per completion. That's not that good. They don't need him right now to do all that. And they took him out in the third quarter because it was already a blowout at that point. a lot of these times, I mean, in some of these games too, last year where they took him out, he didn't reach the high passing stats because he was out by the fourth quarter. So like with the style that Lamar Jackson plays with, he's not going to get the sexy passing stats that you always see in the NFL. And do I think that the Ravens can win a championship with this? I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, but they can at least win with this offense. And right now, there's only, like I said earlier, that I'm comfortable in saying that the Bills and the Chiefs are the teams that scare me the most in the AFC. I really am not scared of any other team in the AFC at this moment. But Lamar, great day yesterday. I thought it was one of the best games that he looked this season as far as throwing the ball, as far as it came. Like, I know he only had 113 passing yards, but the connection he had with Boykin, the beautiful 43-yard touchdown, that was great. The 2 touchdowns he threw to Marquise were right on the money, and the one in the fourth or third quarter, the second one that Marquise caught, he was like right back in the corner of the end zone there. The tiny guy like him sneaking back in there, it was like the perfect spot. They're striking when they need to. And Lamar, I think certainly in terms of how the ball looked coming out of his hands, albeit against a terrible Bengals defense, it looked really great. And against the Titans' 29th ranked pass defense, I think there's a chance for that to continue here. We'll certainly see. J.K. Dobbins, I mean, just an absolute beast. This is a question I have for you because we saw it yesterday. Will the Ravens have 4 active running backs for their game this weekend? Because I don't know. I just find it hard to imagine. Not to get off topic from Dobbins for a second, because he's just an absolute machine. But to ask you real quick, and then we'll go back to Dobbins. Do you think they'll go 4 running backs active for the wild card game? I just can't see them holding Mark Ingram out for that.
It's hard to say. They had him active this week, so they had all 4 for this game. And then we'll talk about some of these injuries here in a second on the defensive side of the ball. That'll play a factor. Does Jimmy come back? Does Ngakoue come back? And there's other guys too that, it's a numbers game. So, but just off the basis of that question,
they've proven they don't need Chris Moore or Prochet to play. They've got Justice Hill to play on special teams.
Right. I don't know. I'll say gut instinct is yes. All 4 are active.
I agree.
In the event that, in an emergency event, I think if you go into this game and Mark Ingram doesn't see a snap, but he's active, they'll take that. But after last year's playoff game where Ingram was questionable going in, but he ended up playing, he obviously wasn't himself. And then they were down, so they got away from the run anyway, and they started passing more. But Gus Edwards didn't get a lot of touches. If, heaven forbid, knock on wood, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins suffers an injury, you need, with the style offense that you run, the run game is your bread and butter, to have Mark Ingram active and just plug him in and go and not, lose a step. Your season's on the line here. It's win or go home, so I think they'll have all 4 active just for an emergency situation.
It's kind of ironic too, because Dobbins is getting a lot of comparisons as far as statistical wise, what he's done his rookie year to what Alvin Kamara did a few years ago. And of course, Mark Ingram was with the Saints at the time. And now, Dobbins is emerging as the top running back with the Ravens. But yeah, I mean, I think they've proven, like I said, they don't need Chris Moore and James Prochet to play necessarily. I know they like having more on special teams, but I really don't think they need him. And Justice Hill has played well on special teams this season. But you go into that game, you've got a guy in Ingram that's, a veteran running back, probably on his way out with the Ravens. He's going to be not, angry or anything about it. He might be frustrated about the situation, but he's not going to complain. But anytime he goes out there after not playing in the playoff game barely last year and being hurt, he's going to want to get out there and he's going to be running hard. He's got fresh legs. So I would definitely expect them to have Ingram active again this weekend. It certainly can't hurt them. And Gus Edwards, I know that the back injury that popped up late in the week wasn't an issue. It didn't keep him out. But if, backs are tricky and if there's a risk of that flaring up, I think it would definitely be wise to have Ingram active. But to go back to Dobbins, I mean, people compare him to Rice because he wears 27. And, I think Dobbins might have like a level that Rice never reached. And that's not, I'm not like trying to insult Ray Rice by any means. I'm just saying that just watching Dobbins blow by all those defenders yesterday and how quickly he did it. I was even surprised. I mean, it's great they're getting him reps. It's a rookie. I'm not surprised, but he was in the game late, and then at times where they could have fed, Ingram or guys like even Justice Hill the ball, they were still having Dobbins in there late in the game with Tyler Huntley, which I think is great to get all those young guys playing together. But I think it's exciting.
A couple more things on the offense here. Dobbins' year, breaks the rookie touchdown record, finishes the year with, I think, over 800 rushing yards. I should have the stat in front of me, but you look at the way he started the season and the amount of touches he was getting in the first 5 weeks.
805.
And the way he finishes the year, for him to hit 800 while sharing carries with, Ingram to start the year, Gus Edwards the entire year, and then Lamar Jackson, by the way, is your leading rusher. He's splitting carries with a lot of people. He's not getting the type of feature back carries that he would with another team possibly. He still hits 800 even after the slow, and I say slow hesitantly to start the season because he just wasn't getting the opportunities. It's not like it was an ability thing. I'm very impressed with him. Also, throw in the fact that this is something we've said about the rookies. Patrick Queen is at times this year. That's why I'm very high on Patrick Queen. What he's done this year with no formal training camp, no formal preseason, everything being significantly stunted by COVID-19 this season, for those two guys to come in and have the impact that they have had, I'm very impressed. I'm very high on both of them. Yeah, how can you not like what J.K. Dobbins is doing? When it's all said and done, 4 years from now, what they do with him, do they re-sign him? Do they let him go? Running back contracts are tricky in today's NFL. There will still be a debate about whether it was the right thing to do to take him with the pick they did in the second round. You can still have that debate. That's fine, especially if they end up not re-signing him in the long run. But you can't be mad that a rookie came in first year, and if he's only going to be here 4 years, because second-round pick, not the fifth-year option, if he's only going to be here 4 years, you'd want him to produce like this right from the jump, and he's doing that right from the jump. If you only get 4 years of contract out of him, you hope that all 4 of those years are super productive on the field. It doesn't take him a year to get his legs under him and to get up to the NFL speed, and then he gives you 2.5 or 3 good solid seasons. No, he's going to give you, and all indications right now are that he's going to give you 4 full really good rushing seasons at least, and then we'll see what they do contract-wise down the road. That's always going to be a big question mark with this team. With how many good players they're seemingly drafting at this point, it's becoming a numbers game. How many guys can you afford to keep? You have anything else on the offense before we move on to the defense?
I really think that the Dez Bryant signing has helped Boykin, Myles Boykin. I know that he's had 1 catch in each of his last 6 games, which really doesn't say much, but 3 of those 6 catches have been touchdowns in that span. He obviously had the beautiful, perfect pass to him yesterday from Lamar, the 43-yard reception. And, Marquise Brown had the 41 yards on 5 receptions for 2 scores. But, not to say that Boykin is becoming that great of a receiver because he's still only catching 1 pass per game. But again, when you're a receiver in this Ravens offense, I mean, unless your name is Marquise Brown, you're not going to be targeted, 6-7 times throughout the game. And whenever you are targeted, it's all about taking advantage of the opportunities. And Boykin certainly has done that and has struck a couple of times here in the end zone recently. So, even if Dez Bryant isn't on the team next year, I certainly hope that whatever impact he has on Boykin can help him in the future, because you just look at those 2 guys and they're very similar in terms of the way they're built. And I think if Boykin that's struggled with his route running and the play calling at times early in his career, I think having a similar veteran in there that's had a lot of success and has made Pro Bowls and things like that, had 1,000-yard seasons, can only be a good thing for him in his future.
Right. A lot of praise needs to go to Boykin for turning things around. There was a point earlier this year where he just wasn't on the same page with Lamar. There was some more than a few plays, more than you would like to see, obviously, where he's not seemingly running the right route. Lamar's, throwing the ball 10 yards behind him, 20 yards in front of him, expecting him to be somewhere else. Coaches talked about it, and in the span of a couple weeks, it got fixed. And now you talked about the stretch he's had, only one catch in these games, but showing up big in the red zone, or in the case of this Sunday, not in the red zone, but on a deep, 40-yard touchdown pass. So you look at, the type of red zone offense the Ravens have had the last 2 seasons, and the type of red zone quarterback Lamar Jackson has been, where, 49, 50 touchdowns and no interceptions in the red zone. The success that they have had in the red zone, it's not just Lamar. It's not just the running game. It's the receivers, too. It's the whole offense. It's all 11 guys in sync. They all contribute to that. For Boykin to not have, the high reception total, not have the high yardage total, it is what it is. But if he's a red zone threat with his size and I'll say this, he doesn't drop passes. Say what you want about Myles Boykin. You can get on him for whatever. When they throw him the ball, he catches the damn ball. So that's number one as a receiver. And that cannot be said about every Ravens receiver we've seen in the past 4 or 5 years. And it can't be said about Marquise Brown every time. He still drops passes. So I look at Myles Boykin, and he's still a guy. I said it earlier this year when people were really down on him. I defended him. I said, look, you take this guy, you put him in another offense that passes more, make him their number 3 wide receiver, he's going to put up good numbers because he catches the ball. It's that simple to me. He would be a name that's probably on everybody's radar around the NFL, maybe a fantasy option. You ready to move on to the defense?
Oh, I was bored ready, Nolan. I'm ready for whatever you're ready for.
Fantastic. All right, well, the story about the defense, besides their absolute domination of the Cincinnati Bengals offense, is unfortunately right now the injury bug. We've been talking about it for weeks. Can this defense get healthy? Well, they got Marcus Peters back this week. He spent the last couple weeks on the inactive list. Last game he played before this was the Cleveland game. So he missed Jacksonville. He missed the Giants game. I think Harbaugh said for both of those games he had a chance to play. They just sort of they're playing it safe with him. They held him out. They wanted to make sure that he's 100% when he comes back, and they liked their odds with some of their depth guys that were 100% from a health perspective versus Marcus Peters not at 100%. So I understand that reasoning, and he's back now. He looks good. Had the interception in the end zone. The Bengals were knocking on the door. Looked like they were going to punch it in for a touchdown late in the game. Peters said nope, snatched that ball out of the air, and they held the Bengals out of the end zone on the entire day, only gave up a field goal.
Terrible throw, by the way. Terrible throw.
Not good. But, Peters covered a lot of ground there, and it was back-to-back coming off of a play where he got hit with a pass interference and then spent the entire duration between plays yelling at the referee, and I'm sure probably did not stop yelling and looking at the referee until the ball was snapped, and then sprinted across the end zone and picked the ball off. Probably the most Marcus Peters sequence you'll ever see, but that's what you like about him. You take the good, you take the bad. That's Marcus Peters. So he's back. He's healthy. That's number one. Jimmy Smith sidelined again. We got to talk about him. He signed a 1-year deal. Let's throw that in real quick about Jimmy. Jimmy Smith still sidelined with an injury. Harbaugh has said that he's got a chance to play this Sunday in the playoffs. He's on track to return. Maybe a similar situation to Peters where they're just holding him out to make sure that he's absolutely 100% when you need him most. I understand that. It obviously worked out. You didn't really need him in the Cincinnati game. No harm, no foul. But he does sign earlier this week a 1-year deal with the Ravens. He's going to be here in 2021. Spent his entire career with the Ravens, has said multiple times he'd love to finish his career with the Ravens. But I'll say this, $5 million max, only half of that is guaranteed on that 1-year extension. So it's filled with incentives. I think this is a bargain for the Ravens either way. If they end up paying him the full $5 million, which is very unlikely, it's still a bargain. So I don't know how you feel, but to me, if Jimmy Smith plays a full 16 games next season, he's definitely worth $5 million. That's a bargain. To get a full 16 games out of Jimmy Smith, I'll pay $5 million for that, no questions asked. With the level that he's still producing at, absolutely. And if he doesn't play a full 16 games, like we've seen has been the norm with him, he gets banged up. Hopefully it's just little minor injuries that only have him miss a few games here and there, and he can still finish the year with you. He'll make less than $5 million, and it'll still be a reasonable price. So I think this is a smart contract. Glad Jimmy wants to stay. And, you look at this season especially, Ravens came in with a lot of high hopes about the secondary. Things can change in a heartbeat. Tavon Young done for the year. Jimmy misses some time. Marcus Peters misses some time. Marlon Humphrey misses a game with COVID. Depth disappears quickly at cornerback, and it can never hurt to have a guy of Jimmy's caliber. I can't find a reason to be upset about this deal. How do you feel about it?
Oh, perfectly fine. I mean, that's you were kind of touching on it there, but I mean, the Ravens did the same thing when they gave him a 1-year deal this past offseason because he went out and tested the market and realized that there wasn't anything there for him. And, it's a smart move because the expectation this year, I mean, Jimmy Smith being beat up at this season shouldn't surprise anybody at this point because he was never supposed to be in the role that he's in now. I give him a lot of credit for playing through, 56 different injuries and still playing on the outside, now being in his 30s in the NFL, because that was never supposed to be the case at the beginning of the season because you were going to have Tavon Young helping out and you would have Peters and Marlon Humphrey on the outside, and Jimmy was going to play a little bit of safety. So, assuming they get Tavon Young back healthy next year and, the secondary comes back healthy, maybe even a guy like Iman Marshall, who is a recent draft pick who hasn't even played at all because of injuries, much defense that is, maybe he, takes a bigger step. And Anthony Averett certainly played better lately. So assuming that the Ravens' depth in the secondary comes back next year, I think it's a lot easier to get Jimmy Smith through a full season because he doesn't have to play nearly as much. And even when he is on the field, maybe he plays a little safety and doesn't have to be, he doesn't have to play as physical as a position as the outside cornerbacks do. So yeah, I mean, and like you said, if he doesn't play 16 games, he makes no money. Essentially, he gets all of his, because he gets $2.5 million, I believe, and the rest is made, assuming he plays all 16 games. So it's smart. You're going to get good play. He's going to be a guy probably 32, 33 years old next season. So it's not a guy that's going to be playing every single snap. It's more of a role player. And, you would hope that next season the Ravens don't have all these injuries in the secondary and that it's a little bit more of a smoother process. And COVID isn't an issue either. And they can, get more use out of Jimmy Smith. And maybe you're not in a situation like they are now where I think he does have a good chance to play. From what I've heard, you kind of said it too there, where you don't really need him against Cincinnati, but if you can get by without him and Peters was back 100%, that certainly is a good way to go. And I expect him to be playing. I don't think he would, assuming he's healthy enough to play, I don't think there's any chance he misses the opportunity to play in the postseason again.
Yep. And one more guy that's a question mark, which is kind of an interesting question mark, is Yannick Ngakoue. He missed this week after, I guess, something flared up on him during the week. I mean, he was a full go in that Giants game, so something happened. Or I believe he left that game midway through. It was kind of a quiet thing where he left the game and no one really noticed. And then during the week, he was on the injury report. So Harbaugh, same comments with Jimmy that he had about Ngakoue. It's got a good chance to play. They're on pace. Their timeline is that he's going to be able to play. So unless something else happens, I'm assuming he plays, and that's important. I mean, he brought him in to bolster this pass rush. We know the results haven't been there and haven't been as frequent as we probably would have liked, but he's seemingly gotten it going the past couple of weeks against some of these bad teams. So you hope that, maybe he gets rolling. And I will say this, you're facing the Titans. I seem to remember earlier this year, one of Ngakoue's best games, he did get a sack in that game, but he didn't bring the Tannehill down. He knocked the ball out, swatted the ball out of his hands. But I do remember that was the game, if I'm not mistaken, where Ngakoue was consistently beating their left tackle. Probably after Taylor Lewan was done for the year, I would guess, because I don't think he'd be beating him on every single play. And I could be confusing it with another game. I don't know. But if that was, in fact, the Titans, certainly like to have Yannick Ngakoue back this week for the postseason. And that's a good transition to the rest of the defense for this game because, oddly enough, Jake, the Ravens did not sack Brandon Allen in this game. How about that? They did not bring down Brandon Allen, the Bengals quarterback, in this game, and yet he was held to just 48 yards on 6 completions, threw 2 interceptions, never found the end zone. Very interesting. Defensive dominated game, so many 3-and-outs forced. It took the Bengals until late in the first half to finally get a first down. Complete domination, but they never sacked him. So it's weird how things work out like that.
Can I be 100% honest with you real quick? I'm just realizing now that this wasn't the same guy that was with the Washington football team. That was Kyle Allen. I just realized that now. That's how unfamiliar I was with Brandon Allen.
All these backup quarterbacks look the same to me.
Sorry to Brandon and his family for generalizing him. I did not mean to do that there. But yeah, he has the same last name as Kyle Allen.
Hey, he had his moment last week against Houston. Great game. 300 yards or something crazy. He had a great game against Houston. So he had his moment. I don't know. What else is there to say about this defense? It's really just about getting healthy, honestly. We've been saying it for weeks now. Can the defense get healthy? If they get healthy, they got a good shot. Calais Campbell is back. He's getting his legs under him every game. The run defense looks like it's at full force. The secondary's getting there. If Jimmy ends up playing, it'll be at full force. Let's move on to the Titans game. To keep it on the defense, I think this is just as much about the Ravens defense as it is about Lamar and righting the ship for him to finally get over the hump, play well in the playoffs, and hopefully win a playoff game. This is just as much about the defense, in my opinion. It's not just Derrick Henry posing a threat to you. It is this Titans receiving core, and let's give credit to Ryan Tannehill. He's quietly had a very impressive season this year. Last year he was a game manager. He was not throwing the ball a lot. They rode Derrick Henry, and rightfully so. Derrick Henry's an absolute monster. He's a game-changing player. What I didn't expect is Tannehill to take the jump from game manager and just a guy that makes the occasional pass and doesn't turn it over to an actual threat with his arm. He had a great year, and he's got a great receiving core around him. A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, all these guys pose a threat. They're not one-dimensional by any means, and that's why it's so important for the Ravens to be at full health because this Titans offense is dangerous. They're very dangerous. The only reason they're at the record they have is because their defense is so bad, and they have to win in shootouts.
I think if they get Jimmy Smith back healthy and the secondary is at full strength, that certainly does bode well in terms of defending the pass. I think this is, a good matchup for the Ravens as far as the run defense goes. I mean, people forget, like I said earlier, 2 of the key players, Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell, weren't out there the last time these 2 played. And, you look at that Ravens defensive line, you've got like a lot of young players on this Ravens defensive too, but on the defensive line, you've got a lot of hungry veterans there. You've got Calais Campbell, playing in his first playoff game with the Ravens. I mean, he may have, back when he was with Arizona back in the day, he might have competed with Carson Palmer and all them, or Bruce Arians a few times back in the postseason, but and then he was with Jacksonville too, but he's played on a lot of bad teams as well. So he's definitely going to be hungry for a playoff win here. You've got all the Ravens young players on defense that have been there and lost the last couple of years. You've got Derek Wolfe, who's won a Super Bowl with the Broncos, but hasn't been back to the playoffs in a few years. Brandon Williams hasn't tasted a playoff victory since 2014. You got a lot of hungry veterans on this Ravens defense, particularly on the defensive line. And I didn't even mention Marcus Peters playing the Super Bowl with the Rams too a couple of years ago. So a lot of veterans on this defense that have playoff experience and haven't tasted it in a while that are going to be hungry, and a lot of young players that have been a part of the losses and haven't experienced a playoff victory at all. So that's what I think is going to help the Ravens here. The Titans have obviously experienced playoff victories much more recently. This is not, I'm interested to see, I guess the top storyline for me is how does Derrick Henry look? And if Derrick Henry doesn't look like himself, can the Ravens adjust to that and successfully defend the pass? And I think they do stand a chance with a full healthy slate of starting defenders out there back in the secondary. So, but I certainly think in terms of where, the Ravens defense is compared to last time, they're going to be more healthy and they're going to have more of their guys there. So it's a great matchup, and I'm happy we get to see it again. But right now, the Ravens look like they're favored because a lot of the Titans have had some struggles, particularly on defense lately, and the Ravens have just been so hot. So it's going to be very interesting, and not to mention that the road team, as we remember last year, the factoid was the road team in this playoff matchup has won every single time, and that turned out to be the case as well. So that storyline continues into this season too.
Yeah, and an old rivalry brought back. I said that earlier, that the just 2 games in the last calendar year have made this feel like a intense rivalry again, which is great. It's exciting. Old Ravens fans will certainly enjoy that. All the old school battles in the early 2000s.
Well, here's another hard hitting question for you, because these are the questions that really make sports talk and podcasting and things like that, Nolan. Because I'm interested to get your thoughts on this. Do the Ravens roll out there with the traditional white jersey, black pants playoff uniform, or do they overtake the purple pants and break out that new look this weekend? Because I don't know. I think that look might be overtaking the black pants as the top road look, I must say.
Well, we're big jersey guys here. We're big uniform guys. We care very much about that. I just mentioned it a second ago, this being a historic rivalry. I say you go all white. Take it back to the old, take it back to
I like it.
To 2000 playoffs. And really, up until 2008, they wore exclusively all white on the road. That's one of my favorite jerseys, by the way. Take it all white on the road. And to me, the all white uniform is a blank canvas for you to show how good of a game you had. And if by the end of the game it's covered in blue and silver from the Titans logo and green from the grass, maybe a little red from the Titans logo, that means you had a good game.
Well, here's the thing. I like the all white idea. I really do. But I don't know if they can replicate the playoff games of old, because the Titans have changed their uniforms, and I don't think they're as good as the old ones personally.
No, absolutely not. But I don't care about the Titans. I just want to see all white Ravens go in there, playoff game in Tennessee, bring back a lot of memories for some older fans. But I think it's my favorite road uniform anyway. I don't hate the purple pants. I certainly like them more than the black. But I just think that nothing beats the classic all white to me.
Right. It's just that too many teams have like black pants or an all black look now. Like it's overdone. I think the Ravens have one of the best all black looks, don't get me wrong, but like the Cardinals have an all black unit. Why? They're not black.
Eagles, although I always thought the Eagles all black uniforms look good too, but all right. Offensively in this game, Lamar Jackson, it's the talking point of the week. Lamar Jackson, can he right the ship? Can he finally win a playoff game? This is his first road playoff game. That should be noted. Both of his previous ones were at M&T Bank Stadium. To me, this is just, look, Lamar's playing like the MVP recently, but he does not need to be Superman for the Ravens to win this game. Run the ball, stick to what you do best, let him run the read option. Don't get too cute, don't get too fancy, just play your game. Don't turn the ball over, and you're going to have a chance to win this game. It's really all it comes down to. I think our friend Ian Schultz, we talked about this last week on the podcast. I think I saw him say something on Twitter today about this. I agree 100%. Don't turn the ball over, and when you get in the red zone, finish with a touchdown. That's what it's all about. When you get in position to score in the playoffs, you have to finish. And I think I've said this before, turnovers in the postseason just weigh so much heavier. If you throw a pick in the playoff game, it feels so much worse than a regular season game. It can change everything. Fumbles, turnovers, muffed punts. It weighs so much heavier. So don't turn the ball over. Don't give them anything free. They're a talented offense on their own. Don't set them up with good field position. Just play your game and let the chips fall where they may.
Well, low-key concern for me in this game is hoping Sam Cook plays, and I'll just get that out of the way. I hope he's back this week. But to focus on the matchup here, I mean, the Titans have the 14th ranked, run defense, and when I say that first, I lead off with that because that's obviously what the Ravens' bread and butter is. That's what's gotten them to this point is the run game. That 14th rank, it's not great, but again, there are no slouches against the run. They're about league average for where they are. So I think the Ravens, with how much success they've had this week, they go to the run first and stick with it until it doesn't work. And if they get into a situation where it doesn't work, then you attack the Titans' 29th overranked pass defense, and I imagine they would have some success there. And they don't their pass rush is nothing to write home about. There's no Jadeveon Clowney to worry about this time around. I'm not even sure if he played in the first game against the Ravens, to be honest with you, but that's what the Ravens have to focus on. You've been running the ball so well that you named like the 75 different records they broke yesterday. I don't need to make any more mention of how good they are at doing that. So that's what it should be. And if they've got 4 running backs and Lamar Jackson all active, I see no reason why they can't do that. Asking me for a prediction, I think the Ravens go up pretty big in the first half, and I think they continue the theme of the road team winning in every single game that these two teams have played in the postseason. I'm going to go Ravens 31-24 in a game that they win by a touchdown. But I don't think the score is indicative of how the game actually was. I think the Ravens will control this game for most of it.
So I'm going to pick the Ravens as well. I've gone back and forth on this since yesterday evening, when the Titans, by the way, win the division on a doinked field goal. By the way, we didn't even mention that. So maybe all of the Titans' luck ran out on that play. Maybe they used up all their magic fairy dust on that play, and they'll come out this week and they'll just be stomped by the Ravens. Wouldn't that be great? But in reality, I think this will be a very close game. I think it's going to be a sweat from start to finish, a very stressful game for both fan bases. I'm going to pick the Ravens to pull it out. I like where the defense is at health-wise. I like the way the offense is rolling, but they, like you said, they also have it in the back of their mind that they're not invincible. But it'll be a good game nonetheless. Real quick, let's go around the rest of the playoffs, give some predictions, and then pick for who will go to the Super Bowl. Start with Cleveland and Pittsburgh. They're going to play in back-to-back weeks. I think a lot of people want to pick against Pittsburgh here because they just have looked so beatable and so weak the past couple games down the stretch. I think a lot of people wanted to see the Ravens take on Pittsburgh in the first round. I'm going to take Pittsburgh to beat Cleveland. I think Cleveland, they make the playoffs for the first time since 2002. They don't know what it takes to win in the playoffs. Baker Mayfield doesn't know what the hell the playoffs are. Cleveland doesn't know what the hell the playoffs are. They know nothing about it. Ben Roethlisberger knows what it takes to win in the postseason. Mike Tomlin knows what it takes to win in the postseason. I think Pittsburgh finds a way to win this one. I don't know if it's pretty. I think it's an ugly game. Maybe a late turnover or something for the Steelers defense to help seal it. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh just because they may not be playing their best ball right now, but Cleveland isn't for that matter. I just think Pittsburgh, with their veteran leadership, finds a way to win this one.
I agree. Respect is earned, Cleveland, not given. Steelers by 10.
Next one, Bills host the Colts. Sounds like the Bills Mafia will be allowed in some capacity into that stadium, which is great to see. They get the Colts. Colts have a nice defense, offense, very, very mediocre at best. Phillip Rivers, just don't trust him at all, especially in the postseason. I think the Bills might be the team to beat in the AFC. I might even put them above Kansas City, but I'll take the Bills here pretty handedly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do think the Colts have a chance because their defense is legit. But I think, Josh Allen and company, Stephon Diggs just has been a monster. I mean, he's up there with the best receivers in the NFL with the numbers he's put up this year. I agree. Buffalo could win also possibly by 10, but I'm going to take them to win this one and they advance.
All right, let's go to the NFC. The Chicago Bears got in at 8-8. They lost to Green Bay, but Arizona also lost to the Rams. So the Bears are in at 8-8, and they get the wonderful present of going to New Orleans and playing in the Superdome. Not as bad as a normal year because, again, no fans, but still, this Bears team is just they are very much an 8-8 team. They just are mediocre in every sense of the word. I like their defense a lot. They got some really damn good players on that defense that are fun to watch. We know about Khalil Mack. I don't know if it's enough. And Mitch Trubisky in that offense is just, it's disgusting. So might be the biggest blowout, although there's another NFC game here that could contend for that, but we'll see. I'll take New Orleans, but this is not a hot take by any means.
I'm going to take the Saints as well. I also wish that Arizona was in the postseason. I am not looking forward to watching, Mitch Trubisky and the Chicago Bears at all, but I have no sympathy. I have sympathy for Larry Fitzgerald. I feel really bad that he didn't get to play in possibly his final regular season game yesterday. He probably comes back at this point. I doubt that he ends on that note.
Next one, very interesting. Rams and Seahawks. Very exciting matchup, although a lot is depending on Jared Goff's health. Yeah, I'll say this. If Jared Goff is healthy, I really like the Rams in the NFC. I think they got a chance to go on a run if he is healthy, but if he is not able to play, which as of right now, McVay has said it's still up in the air. Now, I don't know if that's just coach speak and he's trying to keep stuff a secret. I don't know. As of today, Monday, I'm going to take the Rams. They're a more complete team, and this is assuming Jared Goff plays. If he does not play, I'll take the Seahawks. I know, real exciting, but it's that important. I mean, and like I said, the Rams are a really solid all-around team. They got a nice defense. It's big hitters on offense. I think they look the best they have since the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And like I said, they've got a chance to go on a run if Goff is there and healthy. So I'll take the Rams over the Seahawks.
I definitely think the Rams have a chance to win if Jared Goff plays, but I mean, Goff really hasn't played well lately. The Rams are stacked. Don't get me wrong; they've got a lot of great pieces. I'm just not sold on Jared Goff, and even if he does play, I mean, a injury to his throwing hand, I think it's his thumb. Not being 100%, even though Seattle's defense is garbage and the Rams could probably just run the ball. I just don't have confidence in Jared Goff, and that's why I'm going to go with Seattle to win that one, especially since they're in Seattle for it.
All right, last game. Washington football team, after clinching their division last night in maybe one of the worst Sunday Night Football games of the year, they will get the honor of hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Tom Brady, who, guess what, NFC, he's your problem now. Get him the hell out of the AFC. That's something we didn't mention earlier, by the way. Thank God there's no Tom Brady and the Patriots in the AFC playoff picture this year. That feels great, doesn't it?
I mean, you still got Pat Mahomes to worry about. So
he's the new Brady and whatever. But we don't have to worry about both of them. He's the NFC's problem now. The Bucs have not looked maybe as explosive as we would have thought at times this year. They've had some head-scratching losses as well. But they're still clearly the better team here, and I'm not going to make any sweeping statements about the Bucs going to the Super Bowl or anything, but they will certainly beat Washington. It's same thing with what I said with Pittsburgh. Tom Brady, look, nobody knows more about winning in the postseason than Tom Brady as far as quarterbacks go. And even though things have seemed out of sync this year with him and some of his offensive teammates, him and Arians as the coach, this is a game Brady can just go into Tom Brady mode and win this one easily. Not turn the ball over, play smart. He's got so many damn weapons. How can they not score? Washington, good defense, good solid defense. So maybe this ends up being an exciting game. Maybe it ends up being a little closer than we think. But I cannot pick against Tom Brady here, especially against a team with a losing record.
Yeah, I mean, picking a team with a losing record would just be disrespectful to Brady. Although, I mean, Brady's postseason history against the NFC East, 2 Super Bowls against the Giants and the Eagles didn't go so well for him. So I don't know if that curse continues, but you just can't pick a team with a losing record, especially one, you got a quarterback on one leg, and God bless the guy. I just hope Alex Smith gets through the game healthy and can ride off into the sunset. But I think picking against Brady and the Buccaneers would be an insult to football with everything going on. So I'm going with Tampa Bay.
All right, and your Super Bowl prediction as of now, just what 2 teams and who do you have winning? I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers over the Buffalo Bills. Packers win their second with Aaron Rodgers. He wins MVP and the Super Bowl MVP in the same season.
I think it's either going to be Tampa or Green Bay in the Super Bowl, but I think Green Bay gets there. And I think that Kansas City gets there on the other side. And oh God, that's a tough one. As of right now, I think until I see somebody dethrone Mahomes, I got to go with Kansas City. But I will say, Mahomes not playing yesterday and getting a bye, maybe that doesn't go so well for Kansas City like it didn't go so well for the Ravens last year. But we'll have to see how that plays out. But as of right now, I'm still going to lean with Kansas City, as much as I hate to say that.
All right. Well, there you have it. There's the predictions. Keep note of them, and we'll be talking about the playoffs every week, whether the Ravens are in it or not, as we normally do. That'll do it for 135. Thanks for listening. As always, we made it through the regular season. Appreciate everyone who's became a first-time listener along the way. Hope you join us through the playoffs and into the future. And as always, spread the word. Tell friends, family, coworkers, whoever you know is a Ravens fan. Tell them about the podcast. Tell them to listen. We'll be here next week after the Ravens take on the Titans in the playoffs. You can have two completely different conversations next week. We can have the most doom and gloom conversation after the Ravens potentially lose, and it's going to be a long off season if they lose again, I'll tell you that much. Or they finally get over the hump, they win, see where they go from there. We'll roll the dice. But we'll be here, win or lose, talking about the game next week. We'll talk to you then.